Alright guys, today we're going to start a lesson on ratios. And ratios, I want you to, I'm going to take a step away, and I want you to pause it and copy the definition, which is a ratio is a comparison of two quantities by division. And then here's some examples. And so I want you to copy that, and then I want you to copy this. Now those are stars, those are meteorites, and that's, I don't know, Saturn. So go ahead and copy that. And, all right, so I'm back. So what does this mean, a comparison? And so when I say 3 to 5, and when I read a ratio, 3 to 5, 3 to 5, these are the three ways you could write it. See, I could look at this here, and I could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I could say that there are 5 stars. And that would, I'm not comparing that to anything. That is just information. All right, I'm just stating a simple truth. So this wouldn't be a ratio because I'm not comparing it to anything. But the moment I say, well, for every 5 stars, there are 3 meteors, this immediately becomes a ratio because I am comparing two quantities. See? Stars and meteorites. And I'm comparing them by division. And what does that mean? You see this fraction bar, division bar? I am comparing that by division. But what's interesting about this is that if I think of it just as one piece of information, one quantity, that's all it is. And I could say there's 5 stars, 10 stars. I could count by multiples. I can manipulate it like that. But the moment I think of it this way, I can also then do what's called expanding a ratio. And I could say, well then for every 10 stars, and I want the ratio to hold true, well then that would mean there has to be 6 meteors, because it doubles. And for it to stay true, I would have to follow this pattern. I could say that for every 15 stars, well if every 5 has 3, then for 15 there would be 9 meteors. And so what happens is, as a ratio, you are comparing, as it says here, two quantities. And this is what they are. All right? So this is a really important concept. And I think a lot of kids get stuck in, well, why does it have to be that way? Because if it wasn't this way, I would just say, hey, well, there are 4 planets. And that is true, and that is using math to express a quantity, and that's great. But we can actually take it into a more complex and describe even more mathematical situations by putting it into a ratio. Okay? So these are your notes, so let's talk about that for a minute. If this is what's neat about, another thing about a ratio is when we ask for a ratio, whatever it says first in the sentence is what is in the top position. So if I say, what is the ratio of meteors to planets? Because I said meteors first, meteorites, I don't know. I would put that in the top position and the planets in the bottom position. So it's a 2 to 4 ratio. If I said, what is the ratio of planets to stars? The planets would have the top position because I said it first, or it was in the sentence first, and then the stars would have the second position. So it would be a 4 to 4 ratio. So that's really important to understand too. So let's move on to, that is the basics of a ratio. You're comparing two things, and hopefully I didn't fly off the screen for that. So now let's talk about a ratio in the context of a table. Here's a table. That's not hashtag, that is short for number. And this table shows a school population at an international school of superheroes. And there are 20 Russians, 10 Chinese, 5 Italians, and 2 Mexicans. And what if I wanted you to write some ratios? And so you have to listen to the language carefully. Listen to this one. I want you to write a ratio comparing Russians to Mexicans. All right, go for it. All right, well, you should have written, well, there's 20 Russians. And because Russians came first, Mexicans came second in the sentence, it would be to 2 Mexicans. So I could write it like that. I could write it like that. I could write it like that. All right? And so you have to listen to the language really carefully to know what order. All right, let's write another ratio. What if I said, write a ratio comparing, I want you to write a ratio comparing Italians to Chinese. And I'm going to abbreviate. All right, go for it. All right, well, since I said Italians first, it would be a 5, and in the Chinese, second, 10. And so here, really specifically, I have said the order, and then you are to write it. All right. Sometimes when you look at graphs, it might say something like this. Remember, if I'm going too fast, you need to pause it. Sometimes it might say something like this. I want you to write a ratio comparing the Chinese to the school. Now here's where a lot of kids get messed up. They're like, the school? What do you mean? Well, the school, if you look here, it says the whole thing is the entire school population. And so where would you get that? Think about that. Well, you would get it by adding all of them. So they want you to compare the Chinese, 10, to the entire school population. Well, let's see, 20, 30, 35, 37. So the ratio would be for every, it would be 10 to 37. And so a lot of what you're doing here is you're going to have to be careful to practice reading it carefully and practice. Are they comparing it to the whole school or to the entire graph? Or are they just comparing two things on here? It could even look like this. Write a ratio comparing Russians to Italians or Mexicans. All right, so let's just read that slowly. Write a ratio comparing Russians, all right, Russians are 20, to Italians or. And so or makes those a group. So Italians or Mexicans, that would be a 20 to 7 ratio. And so this is how you begin to write a ratio. And a ratio is just a simple comparison of two things. Okay? So let's turn to page 22. And let's work on page 22 together. And so what some of you guys are getting wrong is that when Josiah goes to check your work, he's not seeing this page complete. So we're going to work this out together. All right, the first one, it says write a ratio in simplest form, then explain its meaning. So we're comparing, on the first number 1, pencils to pens. So I'm just going to count them. And because pens is first, that will be in the top position. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 pens to, I counted wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, to 8 pencils. But now listen to the language. It says write it in simplest form. Well, this is, we'll treat it like a fraction. Simplest form would be, there are, for every 3 pens, there are 4 pencils. Or for every 6 pens, there are 8 pencils. It's the same ratio. Let's look at number 2. Read the sentence, write it in the way it's presented. They want us to compare pennies to dimes. All right, well, there are 3 pennies. Since pennies was said first, that's what we'll write first, to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dimes. And then it says in simplest form, so what's the greatest common factor? 3. So that would be 1 over 3. So there are, for every 1 penny, there are 3 dimes. Okay, so let's take a look at number 4. Number 4 is going to put out a lot of information. So, you know, a good strategy when they do that is I just write it out. So, actually, we're on number 3. So, number 3 says, last month, Ed ate 9 apples, 5 bananas, 4 peaches, and 7 oranges. I'm not good with spelling oranges. Well, whatever. There it is. All right, so there's your information. If you hold it in your head, you're going to mess up. Now look what it says. Find the ratio of bananas to total number of fruit. So bananas came first, so that's my top position. Bananas to the total amount. All right, well that's 11 plus 9 is 20, so it's to 25. Now guys, is that in simplest form? No, simplest form would be dividing it by the big one of 5 over 5, and that gives you 1/5. Simplest form is, for every 1 banana, they eat 5 pieces of fruit. And that's what and so when you go to explain that, 'cause it says explain it, that's exactly what they want. You don't want to be articulating this as 1/5, 1 to 5. It's really, for 1 banana, he eats 5 pieces of fruit. That's what it means. Oh, this is great. All right, let's see if I can squeeze in number 4. Number 4, divide 28 cans of soda into 2 groups so that the ratio is 3/4. What on earth? What does it say? It says divide this cans of soda into 2 groups. So they want you to divide this into 2 groups. So I'm just going to write it like this, which is so that the ratio is 3/4. So we want the ratio to be 3 to 4. Ooh, that's tricky. Well, they're kind of working this backwards. And so we're just, I think the easiest thing to do is to build up. So we know it has to be 3/4. So we're going to, this is called expanding it. So what if we have 6, then we have to have 8 cans, right? And this is, what are they comparing? 2 groups of soda. So we'll say this is Coke and this is Dr. Pepper. All right, and what we need to do is know the total. So that's 7. This is 4. What the heck? This is 14. So let's go again. Let's make it, let's increase another 3. So that would be 9. And this increases by 4 each time. So that's 12. Is that right? So what would that be? 21. They want it to be 28. So let's increase it again. So that would be, this is increasing 3 each time. So that would be 12. This is increasing 4 each time. That would be 16. And guess what? I add those up. Where am I getting these numbers? I'm adding them up because these are just 2 sodas. Okay? And guess what? We got 28. So this is called expanding your ratio. What's interesting is if you simplify them, they'll all equal 3/4. And that's because they're growing at a constant rate. So watch. Here it grew 3, here it grew 4. Because your ratio was always 3 to 4. And then I added them. 6 plus 8 is 14. 9 plus 12 is 21. 12 plus 16 is 28. And what did we get? 28. What was the question? Divide 28 cans into 2 groups so that the 2 groups are a ratio of 3 to 4. Well, that's 3 to 4. If I simplify that, it goes to 3 to 4. That was kind of crazy. Another way of thinking about that is like this. How am I? I'm good. If you're like totally confused at like 3 to 4, well, actually I'm not going to draw a picture of it this time. So here are some key things to remember in this lesson. Ratios can be simplified. What is it asking? Is it asking you to compare it to the group or just 2 things? Or maybe 1 thing to 2 things? You have to be careful as you read it. So when you go to do your homework, make sure that that's what you're doing and make sure that you check it. Look at number 4 on the next page. Let's see if I can hold still enough. Hold very still, Mr. Toth. I can do this. The table shows the number of books Salvador has read. Find the ratio of mystery books to total. Do you see that word total? You have to write a ratio of the mysteries to all of it. That's what it means. Look at the next one. Divide 33 photos into 2 groups so that the ratio is 4 to 7. That would be just like this. You will have to take the ratio, the basic ratio of 4/7, and begin to expand it. And that will lead you to your answer. All right, guys, a video a day. And guess what? Homework will not be here to stay. I was a rapper in the previous life.